From 68 to 16, here are the surviving members of the Sweet 16 for this year's NCAA tournament. A record 7 of the 16 teams come from the SEC as their conference dominance this year continues. In the South, you've got top-seeded Auburn getting the Big Ten tournament champions from Michigan. Ole Miss will get Michigan State. In the East, it's going to be top seed Duke and Arizona. BYU will face second-seeded Alabama. That will be a high-scoring matchup for sure. In the West, number 1 Florida gets the upset-minded Terrapins. Texas Tech meets the only double-digit seed remaining. That is Arkansas. And in the Midwest, Houston will get Purdue, while Kentucky and Tennessee will renew their rivalry once again. With that, we welcome you to week 2 of the bracket. I'm Jared Smalley. Excellent first week of the tournament, if I don't say so myself. Now we get down to the Sweet and the Elite, and we're going to begin with that Midwest region. The number 1 seed in the Midwest is Houston, and for this regional, they have to travel to Indianapolis and play 4th-seeded Purdue about something like an hour from their campus in West Lafayette. And so for a little bit more on that matchup, we're going to begin in Indianapolis, where our buddy Chris Hagan joins us, the sports director at our affiliate there in Indianapolis. Chris, when you think back to what Purdue did in the round of 32, dominating McNeese like they did, they were the national finalists just last year. But this time around, it is a very different looking Purdue team, right?
Yeah. Hey, Jared. Thanks for having me. When you lose the 2-time National Player of the Year in Zach Edey, obviously you're going to look different. But give credit to Matt Painter. He's lost, first rounders year after year after year. He's lost Big Ten Players of the Year, and he's always come back a quarter of a century now. And here he is, 6 of the last 8 times in the tourney, they've gone to the Sweet 16. Everyone remembers as a 1 losing to a 16 and Fairleigh Dickinson. After that embarrassment, they've gone 7-1 in the big dance. That only loss, of course, in the national title game last year against UConn. A lot of folks had them. High Point will knock them off in the first round. High Point's and Cinderella. McNeese, they've got the goofy guy with the boombox. They're going to knock off Purdue. No, Purdue handles its business, and here they are dancing. And we had looked ahead and said, you know what? If they handle their business, they'll get right here in Indianapolis. And you said it's about an hour away. If you drive like I do, it's about 45 minutes. So, yeah, a lot of Boiler faithful trip here and drive that ticket price up. It's going to be an exciting Midwest regional, the only regional where all 4 of the top seeds have advanced and will continue to play starting on Friday.
That's a good point. And when you certainly think about what Purdue is right now, Matt Painter has done just simply a sensational job, right? And you think about how he has been able to reshape a roster year to year and get similar results. We actually have a comment here from Jakari Harris, a really nice guard for Purdue, talking about how this is yet another version of a new Purdue.
This year, so we can't think about last year. It's like it's a whole new page, a whole new chapter. So we got to come out here and we got to outwork everybody. We got to be the tougher team every single night. And if we do that, I feel like that'll put us in a good spot to win it all. We're gonna have the home court advantage. We're gonna have all our fans there. So yeah, I'm glad we can make it there.
Certainly, Chris, obviously that's going to help the proximity to West Lafayette, no doubt there. Obviously, and they're one of the best shooting teams in the country, so they're going to need to have that accuracy against perhaps the best defensive team in America in Houston. They give up less than 58 per game. It is a nightmare to score on these guys, right?
Yeah, that's what Matt Painter said after that win over McNeese. They're going to have to play great offensively if they want to continue playing in this tournament, and it all starts with Braden Smith. I mean, you see this guy, if you were at the YMCA having a pickup game, he'd be the last guy you'd pick based on how he looks, but he's the Big Ten Player of the Year. He's the straw that stirs the drink. He gets it going. He can shoot. He can distribute the basketball. It all starts with him. Trey Kaufman ran down low. They don't have the size they had with Zach Edey, but the wild card you have to look out for is Fletcher Lawyer. He can be a liability on defense, but when he's shooting and knocking down threes, it opens everything else up. So sure, you need Braden Smith, but Fletcher Lawyer, keep an eye on him. And then off the bench, you have Miles Colvin, son of an NFL Super Bowl champion here, a local product. And you have Cam Heide, incredibly athletic guy who can bring a spark off the bench as well. But as Coach Painter said, when you're playing one of the best defensive teams in the country, you can't have these lulls. You talked about playing in Indianapolis. Purdue played here in Indy against Michigan in the Big Ten tournament, and they got housed.
Yeah.
I went down there on my off day to watch a great game. They got killed. I left with 15 minutes to play. So just because you're playing in your backyard doesn't guarantee anything. And remember, Kelvin Sampson, coach of Houston, He used to be the coach of arch rival Indiana.
That's right.
So the Boilers are used to seeing Kelvin on the other bench there. No love lost between him and Purdue, but things have lined up. Painter talked about, they struggled down the stretch of the regular season, but now they've been doing well. But when they got beat as a 1 seed, they had a great finish to the regular season. So it doesn't always, come out, equal how you're playing at the end of the regular season as to your success in the tournament. And that's been proven yet again. And like they said, forget about last year. It's a different team. It's a clean slate. And right now you couldn't ask for anything better than to still be playing and right here an hour down the road.
Yeah, it's a game played by human beings, so you never quite know. Chris Hagan, as always, thanks, buddy. Appreciate you jumping on with us to talk about this one. And we're going to stay in that same region here. The other game in the Midwest Regional, it's Tennessee and Kentucky for the third time this year. Won't that be fun? And they don't have to go very far, obviously, going up to Indy to play. We're going to hook up here with Michael Epps now, the sports director from our affiliate in Lexington, Kentucky, to talk about this one. Michael, thanks for hopping on with us here. Yet another Wildcat in Tennessee battle. This one with massive, massive stakes.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, guys, it was surprising to see Kentucky win both of those against Tennessee, especially down in Knoxville. They were down, Andrew Carr, who was having back problems, and Lamont Butler was having the start of his shoulder problems. And you had Jackson Robinson. He went down to Knoxville, got a huge win. Then they come up here to Rupp in Lexington, and they were without Jackson Robinson. Lamont Butler re-injures his shoulder with 8 minutes left in the game, and it looked like Tennessee was going to take care of business here in Lexington, and the Cats held them off and got some big plays from Kobe Brea, from Otega Owe. And so you can kind of sense that it's a pretty good matchup for Kentucky, even undermanned without two of their important guards with Robinson and Kirk Kriisa. But they have enough. They can score enough. They showed it in the first two matchups, and we'll see if they can do it a third time.
Michael, you mentioned Kobe Brea. They're tremendous against Illinois. 23-point game for him. And they're one of the 10 best scoring teams in America. So what's working well for them as they've gone on this tournament run?
Yeah, Kobe Brea was, for most of the season, kind of, he's a sharpshooter. He was the best shooter coming out of the portal. And that shooters are streaky. They show up sometimes, and sometimes they don't. So he was really, for a lot of the season, heating up like once out of every 5 games. Mm-hmm. And it was like, all right, you kind of need that to shrink a little bit. You need him to blow up once every 4 games, maybe once every 3 games. And now it seems like maybe even every other game, he's showing up and getting close to 20 points. And as you mentioned, he did against Illinois, and he looked good in that first matchup. Nobody looked good in that first half against Troy, but they figured it out in the second half, got a few threes to fall down and made it happen. But if you get those outside shots to fall from Kobe Brea, and, Lamont Butler's injury, he's struggling to hit him, but he hit one against Illinois. And Ansley Almanor hasn't done much, but if he hits a couple, then you can really start to see the ball rolling and see why for the first couple months of the year, they were right up there with Alabama as one of the best scoring teams in the nation. And they're still up there. Obviously, they don't have that firepower as much with Robinson out, but they can still put up a lot of points on the board.
Michael, you led me to this. Thinking about how the season has gone so far, the SEC, we've mentioned it obviously at the very top of the show, with 7 teams of the 16 remaining, there's a chance there could be an all SEC Final Four. There's a potential for that breaking out into the bracket here. Are the teams just better prepared because they have beat up on each other all year?
Yeah, that was an argument that I think all of us in the conference had was, is it going to beat you up and tear you down, or will it beat you up and make you stronger for when it matters most? And then, of course, the SEC gets a little heat, on the first day, losing a couple. I think they went like 4-3 on the first day of the tournament. And it was like, oh, okay, are they maybe not as good? But then you see, all right, they have 7 Sweet 16 teams, I think. And I think that was the record. Yeah. So you can tell the top of the conference is very good. And you could see that in Nashville. And I was there, and you could tell on that Friday, it was like, all right, those top 4 teams are real good, and they're probably going to win. And they did. And then you got a pretty awesome semifinal day. I like Tennessee a lot, especially now that Chaz Lanier is hitting threes. Yeah. Seeing them like 4 times in person, and then also here in Lexington, they were in this regional. So different team if Chaz Lanier is on fire like he is now, which he wasn't in those 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think Tennessee could have an edge if he continues to stay hot on top of this Kai Ziegler and if Igor Milicic gets hot. But I think the Cats are confident. They know what they have. There was such a crazy kind of lineup rotation of guys getting hurt and who's playing, who's not. Now they kind of know as long as Lamont Shoulder stays healthy, then they know what they have. Amari Williams is aggressive down low. He's missing a lot of bunnies at the rim, but he's a force on the glass, a big, almost 7-footer. And then Brandon Garrison, another big coming off the bench. So they have guys that can put the biscuit in the basket. It's going to be a fun matchup. They say it's hard to beat a team 3 times, but Alabama just won for a 3rd time, and, I think that the 3rd is going to be tough for Kentucky, but it's going to be a fun matchup. And either one of them are going to have a slugfest against Houston in the next round for sure.
Yeah, very, very likely. Well, Tennessee's playing great defense this year, so we'll see how that works out. Michael Epps joining us from Lexington today. Michael, appreciate your time joining us. And we're going to stay in the SEC. We're going to go to the South Regional now. Those games going to be played at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. And we're going to start with the number 1 overall seed in this tournament, the Auburn Tigers. Their first Sweet 16 since 2019, and they are hungry. Todd Pettiford had a great game to pull away from Creighton in the 2nd round. Saturday, they're going to get 5th-seeded Michigan in the round of 16. Of course, Michigan won the Big Ten tournament this year. Jack Patterson from our affiliate in Columbus, Georgia. They do extensive coverage on War Eagle, and Jack joins us now. Jack, good to see you, buddy. And Auburn, obviously, they've got Janai Broome, and no one else does. He didn't have a great weekend in the opening 2 games, but I wonder if that maybe is maybe a way to lull some teams to sleep because they know how good he is. He just hasn't quite shown up in his full force yet.
First off, Jared, thanks for having me back on. But I think that's really kind of describes the beauty of the Auburn squad. Everybody likes to talk about Janai Broome, and rightfully so. He's up there as a National Player of the Year contender along with Duke's Cooper Flagg. But honestly, that's kind of what a lot of people forget. Everybody thinks this team is just Janai Broome and no one else. They don't talk about Chad Baker-Mazara. They don't talk about Miles Kelly. They don't talk about Denver Jones. And I think that's the dangerous part about this Auburn team is that they have so many guys on any given night that can beat you.
Yeah.
They don't talk about Chaney Johnson either. So honestly, if you think that this team is just Janai Broome and nothing else, you're sadly mistaken because there's so many different guys on this team that can get hot, that can have a big night, and that can lead this Auburn team to victory. And that's why they are where they are right now. Janai Broome is a major part of that. Don't get me wrong. But they have different guys that can beat you in different ways.
Well, Jack, speaking of Broome, he's going to have his work cut out for him against Michigan because Michigan is a giant team. They got 2 7-footers. Vlad Golden, their leading scorer, has just been tremendous for them this year. And if you think about matchups, and that's what the tournament really is, how do you view that matchup with the bigs that Michigan has?
I think that might be the one place where Michigan does have an edge. Auburn doesn't have a ton of height.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the tall guys for Auburn, you're talking about Broome, who's 6'10", and then you got Dylan Caldwell, who's at 6'11". But Caldwell is, the inside presence, blocking shots, doing work in the paint on the offensive side, and Broome is kind of everything. But outside of that, Michigan really does have a size advantage, and I think if Michigan is going to be successful, that's going to be one area they have to exploit. But on the flip side of that, I think that's another thing that Auburn can do is they are a lot smaller and they are a lot faster. And they can use the speed of Taha Pettiford, Chad Baker-Mazara, Denver Jones, and they can use that speed to get around those bigs. Then I think that leads to a lot of Auburn success. And we've seen Auburn use that formula this year to a lot of great success, especially in SEC play.
And they certainly have. Auburn's hungry. We know that. They want to get to the not only get to the Final Four, but win a championship this year. They maybe have the team to do it. Jack Patterson, appreciate your time joining us here this afternoon. And we're going to continue our show in just a moment here. By the way, the other game in the South Regional, you've got second-seeded Big Ten champion Michigan State facing off against sixth-seeded Ole Miss in that part of the bracket in the South Regional. When we return, we're going to hit the other 2 regionals. We're going to talk about the East and the West. We've got guests lined up across the country. All that to come when we return on The Bracket. Welcome back to The Bracket, everyone. Let's go now to the West Regional. Basically, it's And you got Duke and Florida competing for which team has looked the best so far. I would argue Duke has. They've just been incredible. Gators, a top seed in the West. They've got a very difficult task here. First of all, they travel across country, going to San Francisco for that regional, and then they've got 4-seeded Maryland. And if you missed it last night, you missed March magic. We were waiting for that big moment, and it showed up last night. Thankfully, the Terps got it done with a little bit of flair in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2016. Derek KOIN, the super freshman, playing the hero with the buzzer beater. Alex Flum from our affiliate in D.C. Alex joins us now to talk about Maryland's run here. They've been on the bad side of some buzzer beaters this year. That Michigan State one in particular was just awful if you're a Maryland fan. And finally, they had one break their way.
Yeah, I mean, 14-4 over the last 18 games, all 4 of those losses coming in the last seconds of a game, 3 of those coming at the very last second. So for one to go Maryland's way, it was a pretty big deal. And for Derek KOIN to do that and kind of have that moment to really cement his legacy in Maryland basketball history, it was something Maryland fans, I think, have been waiting for a long time. It had been 9 years since this team had made it to the Sweet 16. So to do it on that moment, I think they're very much on a high and to take on Florida in this next round.
KOIN was the king last night. There's no denying that. It'll be a true matchup test with Florida. They've got an outstanding front line, and they have showed that throughout the season. You would also think that Maryland's guards are going to be tested here because Walter Clayton Jr. is just such a star for the Gators. He was tremendous in their round of 32 game. Is that really the biggest question in this game about can Maryland match up with their guards?
Well, I think the big thing, Kobe Gillespie and Rodney Rice are going to be tasked with that in this game for sure. And, if you look at it in KenPom, Maryland right now, updated through this tournament, is 8th in the country in defensive efficiency. What Maryland does such a good job of is when maybe there is a weakness in a one-on-one matchup on their defense, they play a lot of help defense. But what happens with that is when they do, it puts them a little susceptible down there. Like you have Derek KOIN and Juju Reese, you'd think, they have a great advantage with 2 big men in rebounding. But the Terps at points this season have struggled in rebounding. So when those guys have to come up and help a little bit, maybe covering some of those guards, I think I'm a little worried about how the Terps keep up with Florida on the glass. And if they can't do that, they're going to be in big trouble in this game, because if Florida gets second chance opportunities, it's going to put Maryland in a hole that, they were able to climb out of it against Colorado State. But it's going to be a different story climbing out of that against Florida.
That's such a good point. And you think about the way that Florida scores it too, right? I mean, they're third top scoring team in the country right now. And that's a lot of pressure on Maryland to have to keep up the pace.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think with this Crab 5, I'm sure you've heard about the nickname. That starting lineup, one of the best in the country, up there, probably the top 5 or so. This lineup, these guys, all of them are scoring double figures just about every game. So I have no question that lineup can keep up with Florida. The question is, if one of those guys gets in foul trouble, there's virtually no one on Maryland's bench that is able to put up scoring. Literally, there's no one. I mean, Jordan Geronimo can come in and get a few dunks. Deshaun Harris-Smith can hit a shot here and there. But outside of that, this team cannot score off the bench. So they're going to need to really rely on that starting lineup. And if one guy or 2 guys have really off games, they could be in trouble. But throughout the season, the consistency and the reason they've won so many games, the reason they've had so much success has been these 5 guys have had a heck of a season. I mean, Selton Miguel is probably their 5th best starter on a lot of teams in the country. Even some of the teams in the tournament right now, he might be a 3rd option. So this team is primed. And if they can get past Florida, who knows how far they could go.
Alex Flum from our affiliate in D.C. Really appreciate the insight. Going to be a great one there, I think. 1 versus 4 might feel like something even more than that. Alex, thanks for the time. We're going to stay in the West Regional now. You've got the 3-seed Texas Tech against a surprise of that bracket so far. The only double-digit seed remaining here, Arkansas, fresh off their upset win over St. John Saturday. Texas Tech, of course, no stranger to latter stages of the NCAA tournament. They made the national final a couple years ago. Cole Banker is going to hop on here now from our affiliate to talk about the Red Raiders and this matchup in particular. And JT Toppin, I want to start right there. Toppin is a problem. He's averaging 18 points per game this year. He had 25 in the win over Drake Saturday, and it was like an easy 25 too. He's only a sophomore, and it just seems that the tournament's great for identifying great talent, and certainly America's learning about Toppin.
Yeah, they are, and Arkansas is going to learn about them probably the hard way come Thursday night. It's one of those things where you kind of got right. You cover JT, which is what UNC Wilmington did, and they held him to like 10, 12 points, or you can focus on Texas Tech shooters that are some of the best in the country. And most of the time, teams elect to, okay, we'll take away the three ball. And what happens when you give JT Toppin the one-on-one inside, you're going to lose that battle just about every time. And yeah, he's only a sophomore, but unfortunately, this may be his last year in college basketball. He's been that good this season. At 25 against a Drake Bulldogs team that just didn't have a chance inside. And yeah, that's got to be a priority for John Calipari for sure.
Yeah, I would think so. But you saw what Arkansas did when they beat St. John. It was a defensive masterclass. Now, St. John, not exactly in full disclosure, not a great shooting team, but they did shoot less than 30% in that game, and Arkansas has got a lot to do with that. And you think about Arkansas as well, they started 0-5 in the SEC. Now they're in the Sweet 16. So clearly they've coached them up. They've improved throughout the season. How do you look at that matchup with at Tech, I should say? Where do you think the most important matchup battle is?
Well, it's going to be a very different game for the Red Raiders than they had against Drake. Drake very undersized, didn't really have anybody that can match up inside. Arkansas is not like that, and they've been having this run without player Thero available. Not sure if he'll be back on Thursday night. That would be huge to get him back inside. But it's going to be JT Toppin versus either him. They have a Visic inside, a 7-footer. Not a great scorer, but he plays some decent defense in there. And yeah, it's going to be the interior battle. I look at rebounding as well. Red Raiders have not been a great rebounding team this year, kind of been middle of the road. But when you give a team like Texas Tech second chance opportunities, especially when they shoot the ball like they have been able to for much of the season, not going to go over very well. On the flip side, Red Raiders got a rebound. They haven't been a very consistent defensive team throughout the season. They've gotten a lot better as the year has gone on, and they played great defense against Drake. They're going to need to do it again on Thursday.
Certainly will. Cole Banker with our affiliate there in Lubbock. Excited to see this one. I think this one's going to be an athletic festival. You've got great athletes on both sides. And, I don't know if we're going to score, 200 combined points in this game, but I bet we're going to be entertained. Cole, I appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on with us today. We're going to take a quick break now on the bracket. When we come back, we're going to break down the games in the East region as we wrap up the Sweet 16. We'll be right back on the bracket. Second seed, high-scoring Alabama. This will be a track meet. Dana Green, the sports director in Salt Lake City, joins us now, kind enough to hop on with us here to talk about the Cougars. They beat VCU in round one. Then they upset Wisconsin Saturday. It's the first Sweet 16 since Jimmer Fredette and those legends at BYU. They got there in 2011. How big a step is this for the BYU program, Dana?
Oh, this is massive for the people. And ironically, the last time they did make it to the Sweet 16 with Jimmer, it was in Denver as well.
Yeah.
And so he was at both games, and there were a lot of comparisons. I mean, they don't have a Jimmer Fredette on this team. This is a BYU team that goes 10 deep. And I know a lot of teams shorten the rotation this time of year. Kevin Young has lengthened it. He literally plays 9-10 guys, and they really only have two guys that average in double figures all year. And I know Alabama's got, 5 guys that average in double figures. And yet BYU puts up 81 points a game. You talked about offensive juggernauts. This is a game that could go into the 90s for both teams.
And no question about that.
For BYU. 14 years, the last time they've been this far. Yeah. And the last time they were here, their second best player, Brandon Davies, he was suspended for violating the honor code. And so they think that would have been a Final Four team. And this year, I don't think anyone had any idea they'd go this far, but now they're talking about Final Four.
Well, that's a perfect way to set this up here. We've got a comment here from Dallin Hall, very nice guard for BYU, again, on a very deep team, talking about how BYU, whatever the national perception is, they do not consider themselves an underdog team.
A lot of joy just over what we've accomplished thus far, celebrating because that's what life's about, right? Accomplishments, but also a realization after Coach said job's not finished, we got more work to do. So this is huge for the program, but we have more work ahead of us, and we feel like we can keep making a big run.
All right, and so, Dana, when you think about the matchup here, you mentioned it a moment ago, both these teams are just going to score. I mean, if we get to 200 combined points, I guess I wouldn't be too surprised in this game. I wanted and specifically drill down on Igor Demin. One of the most fascinating freshmen in the country because you don't think of him like a freshman. He's 6'9". He's a native of Russia. He played for Real Madrid, and he's going to be an NBA lottery pick. It's like he's I don't think you view him in the same prism as you do a freshman, but he has made a big difference there.
Yeah, that was a lot of the question coming into this tournament. How would he handle that pressure? Because there were some games this year against Big 12 teams where he did not live up to the standard that he has set, especially shooting. There was one stretch this year where he missed 21 consecutive three-pointers. And so far in this tournament, he's already knocked down 5 of them. He's shooting close to, 45, 50%, but it's what he does with the ball in his hands, not necessarily shooting. I mean, he had 11 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He's a triple-double waiting to happen, which could happen in this tournament, especially at the numbers this game is supposed to put up. But Yegor is mature beyond his years. He really is a true freshman. We didn't see the whole lottery pick thing like, wait, this guy can't shoot. He's a pretty good passer. He doesn't really, he's kind of timid, but the latter half of the season and then these first 2 games of the tournament, he's shown some toughness. I don't know if you saw that interaction he got in with John Blackwell of Wisconsin. He kind of shoved him, tried to intimidate him, and Yegor went right down and shot a 3 and kind of his face. So he's definitely got some swagger, but I've said all along, he is the key to this team. If he is on, BYU is tough to beat.
Yeah, they're going, and this is just going to be one of the most entertaining games, I think, in the tournament this year. I have no doubt about that. Dana Green joining us from Salt Lake City, as always, buddy. Great seeing you. Appreciate you hopping on with us today. And we're going to round out the East Regional here with Duke. They've been incredible through 2 games. There's no denying that. Perhaps the best-looking team so far. We're going to see how much the competition rises. When they go to Newark, they're going to face 4th-seeded Arizona out of the Big 12. And when you think about Duke, the first thing you think about is Cooper Flagg. They're incredible freshman, perhaps the best player in the country. He looks perfectly healthy. It was actually Tyrese Proctor who couldn't miss in their easy win over Baylor. But Flagg continues to look like the nation's best player, led Duke in points, assists, and rebounds this year. Arizona's only 24-12, but they've got talent. Senior Caleb Love, as he rallied from a slow start to power past Oregon 87-83 in that game. Tremendous player. Still like Duke. Duke's about a 10-point favorite in that game, and you feel pretty good about their opportunity there. That is going to wrap up our look at the bracket in the Sweet 16 edition. Our thanks to our guests from all across the country for joining us here today, and we'll be back next week as we take a look at the Final Four on the bracket. We'll see you then.